In the quiet embrace of dawn, when the valley was still painted in silver mist and the world seemed to be holding its breath, there lived a little bird named Asha, whose feathers glistened faintly under the first touch of sunlight. And though she was small and unassuming compared to the hawks that soared with authority and the swallows that darted with grace, inside her chest beat a heart filled with a longing that would not rest. For Asha was not content with simply hopping from branch to branch or singing the same notes as the others. She dreamed of reaching the great ridge, a distant line of stone and sky where an ancient tree stood tall like a guardian of forgotten songs. And in her dreams, she heard a melody carried on winds from that place, a melody that seemed to call her by name, whispering that she was meant to stand there, to sing there, to discover something greater than the small comfort of her nest. Yet when she shared her wish with the older birds, they chuckled kindly, telling her the ridge was for the strong, the daring, or the lucky ones born with wings wide enough to command the air. They reminded her of the storms that could throw even the strongest bird into a tumble. They warned her of exhaustion, of the vast distances that could swallow a bird whole. And though their words pressed heavy on her chest, Asha did not let go of her dream. For every night, she whispered to herself the same promise: one day I will fly there. And though the words were fragile at first, like the faint chirp of a hatchling, with time they grew louder in her heart until they became the compass guiding every move she made. In the beginning, her attempts were clumsy and filled with failure. She would hop from the lowest branch, flap her wings desperately, rise for a heartbeat, then tumble awkwardly into a pile of leaves, while the younger birds laughed with the careless joy of those who never dared to try. Yet Asha, though embarrassed, shook off the dirt and climbed back again, because deep within, she knew that every fall was not the end but a lesson, and each bruise to her pride was simply the price of growth. So she tried again and again, and though the falls never stopped, slowly something changed. Her wings grew stronger, her balance steadier, and while others still thought she was wasting her energy, Asha felt the shift that happens only when persistence begins to carve strength out of weakness. The days stretched into weeks, and training became her quiet devotion. She studied the wind as though it were a teacher, noticing how the air rose warm above the rocks in the afternoon, how it curled mischievously near the valley floor, how the moon seemed to tug gently at the night breeze. She copied the hawk's strong launch, studied the swallow's tight turns, and even observed the crows who seemed to know tricks of survival no one else paid attention to. And those storms often caught her by surprise, tossing her against branches and drenching her feathers until she felt heavier than stone. She clung to twigs and waited out the fury, whispering to herself, "This too is teaching me." And it was in those moments of rain and thunder that she realized persistence is not glamorous. It is often cold, uncomfortable, and unseen. But it is the hidden forge where determination is shaped into unbreakable resolve. Still, there were nights when loneliness sat heavily upon her small shoulders, when the whispers of the other birds, "You don't have the wings for it, you'll never make it," echoed in her mind. And on such nights, she felt herself shrinking, doubting, nearly ready to give up. Until one day, a small kindness altered the rhythm of her thoughts. For while she sat weary and shivering on a low branch, a human child passed beneath and, noticing the trembling bird, smiled and left a crumb of bread on a rock. And though it was a small act, Asha felt warmth, not just from the food, but from the recognition, as if the universe was reminding her that not everyone doubted her, that sometimes faith comes in the shape of kindness from a stranger. And on another day, an old crow, scarred and weathered by many battles with storms, perched beside her and shared in his raspy voice the secret of slicing through the wind by tucking wings at just the right angle, a wisdom that came not from theory but from years of enduring. And Asha, listening, realized that The world offers both criticism and kindness, and it is up to her to carry the kindness as fuel and fold the criticism away where it cannot weigh her down. And so, with every failure, she rose again, stronger, wiser, more determined, until one dawn the great ridge appeared not as an unreachable dream, but as a challenge waiting to be met, and the air was alive with the roar of wind like an ocean, the ridge looming sharp against the sky like a blade of stone. And as she perched ready to launch, other birds gathered too, some out of curiosity, some out of doubt, watching to see if the little dreamer would indeed try. And Asha felt her muscles ache with the memory of training, her heart hammer with the weight of possibility. And in that trembling moment, she could have turned back to the safety of her nest, to the familiar branches, to the songs she already knew. But something inside her, a quiet ember that had never died, rose up like fire, and she whispered, "This is the day," then leapt. The wind struck hard, fierce as a wall, nearly pushing her back, and for a terrifying instant she plummeted toward the chasm. Feathers whipped, body spinning, but somewhere deep inside she remembered the crow's advice, tucked her wings, angled just so, and felt the air shift from enemy to ally, lifting her slightly, just enough to flap again. And though the ridge still seemed impossibly far, she pressed on, each beat of her wings a refusal to surrender, each breath a prayer to persistence. And as she battled the currents, she thought of the child's smile, the old crow's lesson, the countless nights of practice, and those memories formed a chain, pulling her forward when exhaustion tried to drag her back. The climb was brutal, the downdrafts merciless, but in the narrow window between fear and faith, she chose faith, again and again, until with one final surge she rose above the edge, the great ridge beneath her, sunlight exploding across her feathers like a golden crown. And when her claws touched the ancient tree at the summit, she trembled, not just from fatigue, but from the flood of realization that she had done it. She had reached the place of her dreams. Not because the ridge had grown smaller or easier, but because she had grown larger inside, stronger in spirit. And when she opened her beak to sing, the notes that poured out were not just sounds, but stories, each carrying the memory of 1,000 falls and 1,000 risings, stitched together into a melody that was entirely her own. And that song flowed down the valley like a river of hope, reaching the ears of birds who had never dared to dream. And one by one they joined her, filling the air with harmony, until the ridge was no longer just a lonely victory, but a shared celebration. And in that moment, Asha realized that success is not measured by standing alone at the highest place, but by discovering the voice within you and inspiring others to find theirs too. And so she stayed a while on the ridge, watching the valley glow with new light. And when she saw a younger bird trembling at the thought of flying, she hopped beside it, shared seeds, and encouraged it gently, for she knew the greatest treasure she carried was not her arrival, but the strength and kindness she had gained along the way. And thus Asha achieved all she had ever wanted, not only reaching the ridge, but becoming the kind of bird who could rise after every fall, who could face the storm and still believe, who could carry both doubt and kindness, yet choose courage each day. And in giving her voice to others, she discovered that her dream had multiplied, echoing in the hearts of those who once thought it impossible. So remember this, dear listener, when the winds of your own life push you back and the world whispers that you are too small, think of Asha, the little bird who would not give up, and let her story remind you to flap once more, to rise once more, to believe once more, because persistence turns the impossible into the inevitable, and determination transforms fragile wings into unstoppable strength. And if this story of Asha touched your heart, then I invite you to honor her journey and the message she carries. Like this video, if you felt its warmth, leave a comment sharing the ridge you are working toward in your own life. Share this story with someone who may need courage today. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel for more tales that lift the spirit and remind you of your own strength. For together, like the flock that joined Asha's song, we can rise higher, sing louder, and turn our dreams into living truths. Thank you for watching, and never forget, keep flapping, for the ridge is waiting for you.